States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the meetings of September 27th and October 5th? Motion by Mrs. Weiss, second by Mrs. Manolito. All in favor? 5-0. I believe we have some commendations that Dr. Bustard will lead us through.
We do, and thank you all for joining us tonight, and thank you for joining us tonight. For those of you that are not aware, School Board Recognition Week is designated each year by the New York State School Boards Association. And this year, the week that we are to recognize the tremendous volunteerism that our community volunteers show in their dedication to the board is the week of October. Thank you to the board for your service to the community, and commend you on your tremendous service, which has helped the district to achieve some wonderful goals. So at this time, for surprise number one, I'd like to call upon our high school principal, Mrs. Brzezinski.
Good evening.
It's a brand new car.
That's a whole lot of pressure. Thank you very much for your support of the programs that we have at John Glenn High School and for the Elwood community. So here to just show a small token of our appreciation is our new lead replacement for Ms. Nagel, Joanna Durante, and Acapella to sing you a little song.
Well, we are taping it. It'll be on YouTube tomorrow.
It's hard to take.
behalf of myself, the board, and the entire administration, I want to thank you for taking the time to come out tonight. We created a certificate that can hang in the chorus room to...
Aww, thank you.
Such a genuine response. So this is what we really appreciate the extra person you put in, the time you took us tonight. We know there's lots of things you could be doing, but you can't be doing us.
Really sweet.
And we really appreciate it. So I want to hold.
Me. You're doing all with me? Fix it. Fix it.
Mr. Connie's going to fix it. It will all be excellent.
Right. Sit back. I want to make sure it's for you.
Next time.
Right. You ready? Oh, no, go ahead. All right. You ready, everyone? Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, I know. Should be a little scared. I'm bored on the couch.
But if you felt that was the conclusion of board recognition, you'd be sorely mistaken. The community is well aware that we had some significant accomplishments take place since our last Board of Education meeting. We certainly did, where John Glenn High School and many of our outstanding faculty members are here to join in the celebration, was recognized by the United States Department of Education as a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence. So congratulations to them. And as I have shared before, leadership starts at the top. And the Board of Education has given the administration, the faculty, and staff the resources, the support, and the guidance for the initiatives that helped us to achieve such a designation in our country. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Blue Ribbon qualifications, there are approximately 130,000 schools in the United States that are eligible for the reward, and just over 300 were identified this year as Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence. So we're in very rare company, we're in very prestigious company, and we are very, very proud of our students, our faculty, and staff who made this happen. And you're a big part of it, so we wanted to recognize your role in that. So to assist me in that, I'd like to call upon our Director of Math Science Technology, Mrs. Pamela Coleman.
Right there.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to present to you this evening a small token of our appreciation for your volunteer efforts to serve our community. This is a gift on behalf of the John Glenn High School Technology Department. I'm so happy tonight because, as you know, Mr. Abadi, who is in the audience, spearheaded a lot of these efforts in some of our upgrades to our shop, beginning the last 2 years, really, and now this year, Mr. Rogner and Mr. McGuire are kind of seeing that forward a little bit more. So they did prepare for each of you a token of their appreciation on our new laser cutter, and the wood is reclaimed wood from the John Glenn High School bleachers.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And if you thought we'd just make one that you have to share, you'd be wrong.
I would have put that near your face. Yeah, right.
They've been sanded.
It's fine.
Mr. Abadi?
Yeah. Really awesome. Oh, this is
So thank you again. And
Thank you.
But once again, that's not all.
Oh.
So
In the car?
it's coming. Everyone gets one. You know, There are lots of ways that we want to recognize and celebrate this accomplishment. It is really something that deserves every bit of praise that it receives. And I know the high school administration has some things planned for the faculty and staff that will be forthcoming. But one of the things we wanted to do tonight was recognize the board and the administration again for their role in this achievement. So we have a little gift.
Now it's the call.
Mrs. Marcus, please pass that to Mrs. Marcus. Don't open until everybody has theirs. Mr. Tomio. Mrs. White.
You don't like it?
Amarito.
I go see.
Hold on.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. That's school board.
Mrs. Bernstein. Miss Kelly Gorman. And Mrs. Fine. Open it up and see what Let's talk about the stress associated with picking the sizes. Let's talk about that. To go along with that, Ms. Brzezinski, if you'd come forward for a second. In addition to a small certificate of appreciation that we have prepared for you, we also have a representative from Steve Stern's office with some surprise.
Hi. I don't have a good top.
Well, we got to give you a microphone.
So, Assemblyman Stern, since he was unable to be here tonight, but we really wanted to acknowledge this wonderful milestone for John Glenn High School. So we have a proclamation for John Glenn's designation as a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, so we'd like to present that. And we also have a proclamation for the Scholar Athletes in Distinction. And then I also have some proclamations for the young women who were merit scholars. So I know they're not here today, but I want to present that to you.
Well, we're presenting them to the right person.
Okay, excellent.
And in addition,
It's a great accomplishment.
we'll hold like this. Kelly.
Sideways is the trick. I'll walk it under.
All right, since I know I'm kind of embarrassing you at this point, we also have proclamations from the School Boards Association and Western Suffolk BOCES in recognition of your dedicated service and in recognition of School Board Recognition Week. So these will just pass out on the screen. Tomio.
So, Dr. Bassett, I know that you're going to cover the National Blue Ribbon distinction next, correct?
Which I think we're pretty much
That
done.
we're done. So, I appreciate all these honors and these beautiful gifts, I really do, but, and I appreciate so much the administrative work that went into applying for the Blue Ribbon, because it's voluminous application, and it was shared by a lot of people up here and especially over there. So I appreciate the work that went into getting this honor, but most importantly, I appreciate the people that are sitting in the back of the room that really deserve the honor, because they come to work every day and they make the school what it is. And they put their all in making our school the best that it can be. And a lot of the challenges that we put on them to do their best every day, they take on their shoulders with pride and with honor. And really, all this belongs to you. So I appreciate your efforts every single day.
that sentiment. One of the things that we have been very clearly conveying is the nature of the community earning this distinction. And we've said each time we've talked about the award how the effort begins at Hartley Avenue and the wonderful start that the faculty and staff there gives to our students as they work their way up through and concluding in John Glenn High School. We were blessed that the PTA generously donated some treats and such for each of our faculty rooms to help celebrate it. We turned them blue. There was blue cake and blue cookies and all kinds of things. But I think it was an important message that the PTA helped us to recognize all of our teachers and staff, K to 12, because this truly is an award that is earned by the community as a whole. We could not reach the level of achievement we do with our students without the support of parents and the members of our community that helped us to really achieve at a very high level. So our thanks go out to all. I have to give personal and public thank you, however, to 3 individuals. It's everyone's collective work that helps our students to achieve the criteria necessary for winning the award. But the application process and the amount of work and time and effort that's put into it had many hands, but there were 3 people who really played the largest role in making sure that the application had a blue ribbon effort. And I need to publicly commend Mrs. Brzezinski, Mrs. Fine, and Mrs. Kelly-Gorman for going above and beyond to make certain that just all the tremendous work taking place in our district was documented, evidenced, and illustrated at a level that separated us from those who were not selected for designation. I can tell you on a personal note that last February break, where the rest of us were home and enjoying the time off with our families, these 3 ladies spent an exorbitant amount of time in the curriculum office completing the application. Without that effort, we would not have been identified, and thank you to the 3 of you. And as Mrs. Loughlin might say, enough about the ribbon. We're happy. It's
Well,
great.
we know why she says that.
We will continue to celebrate.
This is my 2nd district I work in that has gotten blue ribbon.
Well, clearly you're the key.
Just want to put it out there. Just put it out there.
Yeah, well, guess what? It's my 3rd, so I win. Anyway, no competition. It's not a competition. It's not a competition.
Ribbon blues,
Um,
Elwood.
So, and there are some wonderful things forthcoming. We will fly a blue ribbon flag underneath the American flag in front of the high school, which is great. And we have ordered an actual blue ribbon, which is the size of a barn, to go underneath John Glenn's name on the side of the building. So we will. It'll be very clear. It'll be very clear that we were a national distinction. And we're fortunate to be able to travel to Washington, D.C., myself, Ms. Brzezinski, and Mr. Pushy, representing the faculty, on Election Day for 2.5 days of conferences that really will help us continue to learn and grow. And we will come back with the actual plaque that will be handed to us by the Secretary of Education. So it's a great honor and a great distinction, and we look forward to the continued celebration. But I've spoken enough. We also have another group of faculty members here who have earned a wonderful distinction of their own right. And to explain the program and the reason for selection and the individuals present, I would like to begin to call upon our Blue Ribbon Principal, Mrs. Brzezinski.
Good evening. As you are aware, through some reports that Amy Song and Emma Coster have given you last year and this year. Last year was the first year that we started the Noble Knight Award to be given out to selected John Glenn High School faculty members. And before I introduce the 10 outstanding Noble Knights for the 2017-18 school year, I'd like to take a brief moment just to summarize the spirit behind the award and the process for selecting the Noble Knight. So, as our recent Blue Ribbon confirms, we have a really talented and dedicated faculty working with the students at John Glenn High School. And again, prior to that status, the administrative team was looking at ways to establish a process that would help to recognize and honor the great work that we saw going on in the classrooms, on the fields, and in extracurricular, co-curricular settings on a daily basis. So we wanted to provide the faculty with an opportunity to also celebrate the successes of their colleagues. Lastly, we wanted to foster an environment whereby faculty notice and recognize with greater intentionality the impact that a fellow colleague working perhaps in another academic department would have on a student and the Elwood John Glenn community at large. Thus, the Noble Night idea was born. This idea was introduced at the September 2017 faculty meeting. The John Glenn faculty was then asked to anonymously vote for one person who would be selected as the inaugural Noble Night. That first night was presented with a bobblehead, not all the stuff that we do for Blue Ribbon, but a bobblehead and a certificate at the October faculty meeting. And then for the next month was charged with identifying the successive faculty member to be knighted. From that point forward, each knighted faculty member gave a speech to highlight the exemplary talents of their selected colleague knight to begin each faculty meeting. It has truly been wonderful to see our John Glenn faculty recognize, honor, and support each other across the various disciplines via this Noble Night Award. So it is my honor to introduce to you tonight the 2017-2018 Noble Knights. And when I call your name, will you please join us up front? So our first Noble Knight is the beloved, recently retired technology teacher, Mr. Dominic Abate. May I say, I could go on about each of these individuals, but I was asked to keep it brief, and thank you, Mr. Abate, for coming out to celebrate with us. Mr. Abate was then selected the man with a heart of gold as the November Noble Knight, our art teacher, Mr. Michael Marino. Mr. Marino searched high and low and said, I must give this next award to our impassioned social studies teacher, Mrs. Maureen Kennedy, as the December Noble Knight. In January, Ms. Kennedy identified and honored the compassionate English teacher, Mr. Garrett Chesnoff, who could not be here tonight because he's compassionately hanging out with his mother who's not feeling well. Mr. Chesnoff began our faculty meeting highlighting the dedication of one of our science teachers, Mrs. Therese Regan. She didn't have to look too far because she had the pleasure to recognize her super focused, goal-oriented science colleague, Mr. Kevin Harrington, who is not feeling well tonight, so he could not be here and sends his regrets. Mr. Harrington then highlighted the incredible talent of our dedicated band director, Miss Vicki Henson, as the Noble Knight for April. In May, Ms. Henson passed the night on to our creative English teacher and kickline coach, Miss Allison Pilaker, who then graciously shared why she knighted another very dedicated social studies teacher, Mrs. Nancy Sherwood, at the first faculty meeting in June. And to end our inaugural year of Noble Knight celebrations, Miss Sherwood knighted the very patient and positive Patty Vaccaro, our special education teacher. And I'm not deliberately trying to plug the blue ribbon in, but when we had the Herculean task of doing that application, what was really Herculean was economizing our words into 400 or 800 words about the wonderful work that our faculty does with our students each and every day. That was the challenge. We could go on and on and on about each and every one of you. And thank you, Mr. Abate, for spearheading it and starting off and selecting just the most exemplary person to then continue what I hope to be a fantastic tradition at John Glenn High School. And while these 10 faculty members come from different departments, they each work tirelessly to ensure that our students get the best educational experience that John Glenn has to offer. And so it is my pleasure to present to you the 2017-2018 John Glenn High School Nova Knights.
Can you get it?
Oh, now it's...
All right, good. All right.
Thanks so much for coming, teachers, and congratulations on that honor. Some of my children were lucky enough to have some of you, and I know why they got picked. So I think next we're going to call up the student liaison, and teachers, if you have things to mark and correct and all those things. Thank you. Oh, you want to stay for Annie, maybe?
That's okay, you guys said
Come on, now. Uh-oh, Annie, you have an AP Gov test tomorrow?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. All right, Annie. Pressure's on. You get some extra points, maybe?
Maybe.
All right. So now for our update from our student liaison, the lovely Annie Song.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm happy to be back reporting the exciting events that have occurred within the last few weeks since the September meeting. For starters, this past weekend we've had our annual homecoming game, and although there was no parade due to inclement weather, the sun was shining as our floats were displayed within the high school and middle school parking lots. Our students demonstrated dedication, creativity, and talent through their season-themed floats. The seniors placed in first with their season of fall, the freshman class placed in second with summer, the sophomore class achieved third place with winter, and the junior class placed fourth with spring. Our football team defeated Bayport with the game score of 48-21. And during halftime, Dr. Bosser displayed the school's new Wall of Fame signs and inductees. The signs were handmade by our tech students who used the reclaimed salvage wood from John Glenn's original bleachers. Our first inductee was the beloved Dr. Virginia Cancroft, who served as the Harley Avenue principal for 24 years and was honored for her endless love and dedication she bestowed upon her students. Secondly, the late Master Sergeant Christopher J. Ragusa was honored for his selfless dedication that ended too soon during his time serving on March 15, 2018. Sergeant Ragusa's family and friends attended the ceremony to honor him and accepted the award on his behalf. During this year's Spirit Week, everyone was buzzing in the high school with energy, and on Friday's pep rally, our seniors once again placed first for the most spirit. Also, the students who were able to witness a fun and exciting game of tug-of-war between the faculty members. And this year, Mrs. Brzezinski and her team ultimately crushed a tiresome battle against Dr. Bosser's And in case you haven't heard, John Glenn's most proud achievement this month is our recognition as a Blue Ribbon School. This award further testifies the hard work and dedication our students, teachers, and staff put forth every day. Although Elwood was already a place of excellence, our achievement of a blue ribbon stands as a symbol of merit which can be recognized by everyone from inside and outside our community. As a student, I'm proud to see that this distinction does not limit our reach, but rather it further pushes our district's goal for excellence. In addition to ending half of our first quarter, the high school also had their first lockdown drill with the Suffolk County Police on campus to monitor and advise the process. The officers were very impressed with the way students and faculty handled themselves in the situation.
Our juniors had their junior ring breakfast where they were able to enjoy a morning of bagels and refreshments together. Those who chose to buy a customized ring received their tangible memory of their times at John Glenn. Additionally, the juniors and sophomores took their PSAT on October 10th. From the counseling department to our AAS center, we are lucky to have fantastic resources in the high school for all students, and recently our guidance department has been continually equipping seniors on their college search through visits from a plethora of schools. On October 22nd, about 55 colleges will be here for our college consortium, and seniors will be able to go down, speak with admission reps, and meet and look at different schools. In promoting academic intervention services, schedules can be found on the John Glenn website, and here students can view and schedule appointments. This provides yet another efficient way of increasing and strengthening parent-teacher connections. Parents alike are encouraged to reach out for support from our wonderful staff. During freshman seminar, our freshmen were aided in setting up a strong foundation and understanding of the expectations and goals for their next 4 years at John Glenn. Additionally, the freshman buddy mentors had their first monthly meeting at freshman seminar, and here they continue to foster healthy transitions and skills. Congratulations are in order for a number of groups and individuals at John Glenn. First, Sue Campo, the September Noble Knight, passed down the honor to Kristen Wirtz, a dedicated speech teacher. Students on John Glenn are always striving to be the best, and with that being said, Yeji Lee has been recognized as the valedictorian for the class of 2019, and Olivia Kelly the salutatorian. We are proud to say that 19 students achieved the summa cum laude distinction, 14 with magna cum laude, and 16 with cum laude. Nicole Correa and her ASL students volunteered at the Manor School for the Deaf's annual Fall Festival. John Glenn students have participated at this event for the past 10 years, and the students raised $104 in tips on Saturday, working the packing and delivery station, and the funds were then donated back to the Millneck Manor School for the Deaf organization. This past Tuesday, the John Glenn Marching Band and Kickline team performed at the annual Newsday Band Festival, and the band and Kickline team displayed the dazzling talent our students have to offer. Additionally, our athletic teams are excelling at what they do best. For starters, not only did our varsity football team defeat Bayport this past Saturday, but they are the number 2 seed, making them a Big Four champ. The girls soccer team had just recently ended their season with a record of 7-7, and the boys soccer team scored their way to become league champs with a stellar record of 16-0. The girls volleyball team is killing it with a record of 9-0, which makes them the undefeated league champs as well. Last but not least, Samantha Gork, a junior, has just qualified into the postseason for cross country. The middle school enrichment course is, not surprisingly, off to an outstanding start. Teachers had the opportunity to participate in a training for the integrated co-teaching program with Beth Lacretz. Here, the students are strengthening their co-teaching partnerships through direct instruction, observations, and debriefing to ensure they are engaged in the best practice to meet the needs of their students. The middle school had a spirit week of their own, and our middle schoolers show their Elwood pride by dressing in accordance to the different theme days. Grade level teams have been engaging in team building activities, team photos, and interdisciplinary units while maintaining a strong student-centered focus. Sports and clubs are up and running, and the parents and students can check out the variety of clubs and activities and what times they meet on the club's link on the school webpage. All clubs are open enrollment, so students are encouraged to join at any time during the year. Boyd had a large turnout for the Boyd Family Picnic, which consisted of a DJ, Italian ices, games for all, and of course, fun and memorable moments. Additionally, Boyd will be hosting Nerd Camp on November 3rd, and there will be an author meet and greet for students from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Last but not least, Charlie Avenue, the September nights of the month are Ethan George Tar, a second grader from Mrs. Fenwick's class, Emma Pandolfi, a first grader in Mrs. DePietri's class, and Violet Kaufman, a kindergartner in Mrs. Palma's class. Harley also celebrated the back-to-school season with an Aloha-themed school picnic. The first round of second grade Music Enrichment Lunch Club has started, and they are excited to announce that the Makerspace ribbon cutting will take place next week, and the sensory hallway is soon to be up and running by the end of the month. District-wide, we have a handful of exciting news and events, and there are more to come. This Sunday is the Breast Cancer Walk, where the National Honor Society and girls soccer team will be making strides of support. With Halloween around the corner, festivities in Boyd and Harley include the Halloween parade, dance, and festival. In all 4 schools, there is exhilarating excitement for what's to come, and I look forward to updating you again once again in November. Thank you for your time and attention.
Wow, thank you, Annie. I'll get home and study for that AP guy. Good night, everybody. Good night.
See you next week.
Okay, I believe we are, oh, we're up to the superintendent report.
What could I possibly have left to say?
I'm not sure.
No, I have one item to share. For those community members that were not able to attend our last meeting, which was held as a special call meeting, the board took action to appoint a new assistant superintendent for business. As you know, Mrs. Lachlan, who is here to assist us tonight through our transitional process and give a valued report. She began her position in the Santa Maria School District, and I hear it's off to a wonderful start, so congratulations to Mrs. Lachlan. But as this is an important position needed to be filled by a highly skilled individual, we found them. Miss Lorraine Dunkel, who is seated in the rear of the room, was appointed by the board unanimously at our last special meeting to join us on November 5th as the new assistant superintendent for business. She'll be seated to my right for our next business meeting on November the 8th. And we are very fortunate to welcome Lorraine back to the Elwood School District, where she previously held the position of treasurer. Lorraine comes to us with extensive knowledge in all aspects of governance in the business office, having held multiple positions that will be under her supervisory purview, and some very valuable experience that she had over the last 2 years in the Belmore Merrick School District. So, Lorraine, welcome officially again to the Elwood School District. I don't know if you have a few words you wanted to share.
I just wanted to, again, thank you to the Board of Education for the opportunity to return to Elwood, and I look forward to working with all of you as well as the community. So, thank you.
And thank you for being with us tonight, and also thanks and appreciation to Mrs. Lachlan, who's doing somewhat double duty for the month of October while she transitions to Santa Maria and helps us transition to Mrs. Dunkel. They've been spending some good quality time together, making sure we have a smooth transition and no item goes unsupervised. So that's our goal. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Bassett. We're up to our first resident remarks. The board encourages all residents to attend its meetings, so this section of the agenda affords them the opportunity to speak. Persons wishing to speak should identify themselves and any organizations they represent at the meeting. Comments related to district business or any agenda item should be kept as brief as possible, may not exceed 3 minutes per board policy. Questions or comments concerning matters of which are not on the agenda will be taken under consideration and may be discontinued by the president. Public discussion of matters relating to staff, students, or others at which their reputations, privacy, or due to right to due process could be in some way violated is prohibited. Any resident remarks? Mr. Scarola.
How many sheets of paper, Pat? I need to keep it
No, not too long. I know the 3-minute rule. I don't think I need the microphone. Thank you.
Mr. Scarola, if I could ask you to use the microphone. We can hear you here, but as we're recording and broadcasting, sometimes that can be difficult without the mic.
Got it.
Thank you.
Test. Good evening. My name is Pat Scarola, and I am an Elwood resident. I'm here tonight to congratulate and thank the Board of Education and Central Administration on several fronts. First, Elwood John Glenn High School being named a National School of Excellence is quite an honor, and it says a lot for our community, our students, our teachers, our staff, and parents. It's also gratifying for our taxpayers and certainly enhances property value. So I want to publicly thank all those involved in making this come to fruition. Secondly, I'd like to congratulate Dr. Maureen Hull upon receiving her doctoral degree. I am happy to serve with her on the curriculum committee, and her positive, inclusive leadership deserves recognition. So congratulations, Maureen. Third, I'd like to thank the board for reinstituting community-wide distribution of a professionally produced school calendar. This is an important vehicle for community-wide communication and a constant reminder of the many wonderful activities that are offered to our students, many of which are offered community-wide and allow all members of our community to participate. Almost all school districts support school calendars. The absence of a community-wide calendar gives the appearance that Elwood is a third-rate school district. We are not. School calendars are a wise investment on many levels, and I hope this practice will continue. This year's homecoming is my next remark. It simply was extraordinary. To see an overflow crowd in our stands was heartwarming. Our football team won the game, our marching band was excellent, as well as our kick line and cheerleaders. Our entire board was present, as well as many of our administrators, teachers, staff members, parents, and students. Lastly, I and my family are grateful that Dr. Barsett and our board created the new Wall of Fame to honor deserving candidates in the Elwood family. I know that the first two inductees were outstanding role models in public service. What a fitting tribute to the Cancroft and Raguso families. In Elwood, we went through a challenging time not too long ago. It is heartwarming to witness the spirit of unity, positivity, and collaboration in once again achieving excellence through cooperation and commitment to provide the best for all. Once again, Elwood is rising to the top in so many ways. Sometimes we need to be reminded of all the good that takes place here. So I want to say congratulations and thank you.
Thank you for those kind remarks, Mr. Squirrel. Any other resident remarks? With that, I'll hand it over to Mrs. Laughlin. Yep.
I'm actually going to sit, if you don't mind, to give this presentation. So this is just the annual update to the board on the fund balance and the external audit report, which the audit committee accepted on October 5th, I believe it was. We're going to go through the annual reserve report as per board policy. This is required once a year to go through. And just fund balance status as it stands as of September 30th, which was my last complete month here. I will work with Lorraine in the future months in preparing so that she has my notes going forward and can make sure she can continue to give you these updates throughout the budget process as we normally do. So just some highlights from the external audit. The general fund unassigned balance came in again at 4%, so we're fully funded as at the allowable limit, which is $2.4 million. The general fund's total fund balance did go up by $757,000, and this was primarily due to excess revenues over the expenditures, which, as we all know, we received about just over $1 million in back aid, which helped us fund the reserves going forward. So this is just a summary of the reserves and fund balance. So revenue over budget was $1.4 million. Expenditures came in under budget at $832,000. On the bottom, you can see we noted we had 1.3% of our budget spent. That's really close. Typically, they like to see it around a 3 to 4%. So just want to let the board know, we're doing good things. We're keeping the budget very tight. We are not overtaxing the taxpayers. We are making sure we're spending every dollar that we're allocating in that budget. And we're not actually spending in a deficit at this point in time. So we did fund the capital reserve $500,000 as per the voter approval in May. We did fund the retirement contribution reserve $450,000. We have interest that we just receive on our monies that we invest of $12,000 gets allocated to all reserves. And then the assigned appropriated we did decrease in the 2019 year for $1.2 million. So you can see $2.4 million is how we come to the total fund balance in the end. So the management letter, which is some suggestions that come from an audit. There are no significant findings. They are just some things that they like to let us know that could use a little bit more review and enhancements going forward. I am happy to say the only finding we had was extra classroom. It's important to note extra classroom is managed by teachers. It's programs that are run by students. There is no funding that comes through the district office or the business office. We have no say in these funds. We do our best in the office to guide and educate the advisors and the extra classroom treasurers to make sure they're doing the right thing as per guidance. We share the guidance books with them and let them know of these findings as they come through. So they didn't have sufficient backup for some disbursements and cash receipts. I have to say, though, this has been improving over time. We've been noted on this over and over again. We did have 2 new treasurers, though, in the past 2 years in both the middle school and the high school. So there is a little bit of a learning curve there, and my office is working closely with them so that they understand the need for these backups and going forward.
So Carrie, these are like monies that are spent with clubs and
Correct.
fundraisers and
Correct.
things like that?
Yep. You know, sometimes they just get a bill and they'll just pay their bill as if you would at home. They don't, you know, in the business office, we pay nothing unless there's sufficient backup and a purchase order approved and prior approvals. They actually have to monitor in that same way as they're using student monies. So it's important for them to understand the need for all of that to be there. And then the other was no sales tax payment on some invoices. This does get into a lot of different gray areas. They are not tax exempt. Student activity funds pay taxes. So for them to understand what they have to pay taxes on or collect taxes for does get a little bit sticky. Tina, the accountant in my office, does work with them closely to make sure they understand the differences of when they need to be collecting taxes on items. So the corrective action plan that we are submitting tonight to the board for this to submit to SED is we are actually bringing in the internal auditors. Naraki Smith will be here on Superintendent's Conference Day in November to train all advisors that deal with money. They last year came in and met with the 2 extra classroom treasurers in the high school and middle school and sat with them for about an hour to go over the do's and don'ts and brief them on some of these findings. But now we're going to expand that out to the advisors themselves. So we're hopeful that by doing that, it will help try to clean up these comments in that area. But I am happy to note that as far as all the operations within the business office, we had no findings in the management letter. And all items from last year we have cleaned up. So those are gone, we closed. So again, the board policy 6020 does require us to report to the board what your reserve funds are and how much you have in each of them. So throughout the course of the year, as you know, in the budget process, I tend to update you on your reserves and where the funding levels are, fund balance projections as we go through the budget to determine if we're going to be raising the levels of any of those or if we're going to be using any of them. So we'll continue to do that as we go through the next budget cycle. I'm not going to read this to you. It is on the website. The PowerPoint is up there. The board has it. It is in policy. But essentially, we have an employee benefit accrued liability reserve. This can be spent by board authorization. It's funded by board authorization. We don't need voter approval for it. It's to pay for anybody that is retiring from district. For any accrued time that they have, we can then use those monies to offset those costs. The retirement contribution reserve, that's for the employee retirement. That's all our non-instructional staff. We are not allowed to have one for the teachers' retirement system. They're still talking and discussing whether or not that will be coming to fruition, but at this point it is not. Again, that is funded and expended by board resolution. We typically do that at the end of the year when we find out what our expenses are and where our levels at the end of the year are going to be. The debt service, we established this in 2015 with the borrowing and closing out of the last capital project that was done. It's just interest and earnings from some of those investments. This could be used to offset any interest payments on the bands that we now have for this current project. Unemployment reserve, it is just that. It is to use for any unemployment expense. This is one of our smaller reserves. We believe we only have about $15,000 or $17,000 in there. We, I'm happy to say, don't have many unemployment claims, so we don't tend to use this reserve much. We do budget for the expense that we may potentially incur each year and usually come in within those numbers. The capital reserve, as you know, we established this May 2018, and it's established with voter approval. We can only spend the monies with voter approval, and it has to follow the resolution that was passed. We will be funding it potentially $500,000 each year for up to 10 years. The funding is only coming from any additional monies that we have at the end of the year. We will never be budgeting a line item to fund this particular reserve. So there may be years where we don't fund it at all. There may be years where we're only funding it maybe $200,000, $150,000, depending on where the books close at the end of the year. So this is just a summary of the year-end 2018. It's comparing the 2 years, 2017 to 18. You can see where the increases and decreases occurred, and that we increased overall from $7 million to $7.7 million in total fund balance. This is a fund balance projection for the end of this current school year. This is as of September 30th. Please note, these are projections, and they're very early projections. A lot could happen. This is only 3 months into the school year. If we have any high-cost children move into district or move out of district, that will swing these numbers significantly, as well as any catastrophe that could happen within the buildings, or anything that really could occur that will either drive a large expense or potentially bring in increased revenue will change these numbers. So based on the information that I knew as of September 30th, it is projected that the fund balance overall will decrease. We are staying on the path of decreasing the assigned appropriated from 1.2 million to just over 1 million. But you can see that they're restricted for retirement. That has the decrease of 639,000. We allocated that in the current year's budget through the budget process last year to pay for the retirement invoice. The goal would be any additional funds would replenish that. We have 3 years worth in that reserve right now, which is what the controller estimates you should have. So we're technically fully funded in the employee retirement reserve. So we're at the point where we need to start using it and refunding it. So that is the goal going forward. So to piggyback that, some items to watch, which is what I'm going over with Lorraine, so she's aware of these key items, and the board needs to be aware as well. Transportation CPI created a break even in the budget over a savings. In past years, we've always had a savings because CPI was so low. We don't receive the CPI number until June. It's May's CPI, which determines our transportation contract, so it's very hard to budget. So we use estimates following a CPI trend, and this year we pretty much broke even on that. And it also depends on our request for transportation based on our special needs students, should we have any other students from out-of-district placements, any homeless children that are moving in that we're required to transfer or moving out. So those are things that are going to continuously change this number. Again, special education students are fluctuating. The health insurance rates, we don't know for 2019. We'll know the definitive rates around late November, early December. We did budget just over 9% on those premiums. We do expect them to come in slightly lower, but we're just waiting on the confirmation of what those numbers will be. And the staffing right now is stabilized within the budget. So we've been able to stay within the FTEs, stay within the budget that we had to move forward into the new year. So again, the goals for going forward into the next budget cycle is to monitor the fund balance for positive Moody ratings. In 2 or 3 years from now is when the ban will turn into a bond, and that's when Moody's will reevaluate the district. We want to maximize revenue to the full allocated tax cap in the future years. The estimates are showing an average levy increase of just over 2%. We want to continue to reduce the reliance on fund balance so they get that 1.2 million down to 0 in the next few years, and continue to fund the ERS reserve first, then the capital reserve with any surplus at the end of each year. Questions from the board?
Very thorough. Thanks, Carrie. Thank you.
Ms. Dunkel, please take careful note of the expedited nature of Mrs. Lockland's reports.
Noted. And I think we have Dr. Hull, Ms. Brzezinski, Mrs. Kelly Gorman, and Mrs. Fine to present Regents results. So just to preface this presentation a little bit, one of the board goals this year is to clarify our understanding of how you use data to inform instruction. So this is one of the presentations that relates to that.
Good evening.
first of several presentations that we're going to provide this year, looking at analysis of student performance data. This evening, we are looking at our Regents exams. We will be speaking with you in the future about our advanced placement exams, and we will be looking at our elementary literacy and math and middle school literacy and math. So this evening, we are starting off by talking about one of our board goals for data-informed decision-making. Technology is not my friend tonight. So, this is our board goal, that the district pledges to use all available quantitative data to systematically analyze the progress of targeted programs, and we use multiple measures to do that. We take a look at our Regents results in comparison to student performance in prior years, regionally, and all of the different exams that we provide within the school district. Our administrators and teachers engage in a variety of tasks related to data analysis, and we will be looking at a few of those this evening. So the Regents exams really play a crucial role at the high school level. They are required for graduation. They are the measure of cumulative learning. They're also the measure of the learning within a single class. And the way that Regents filter into graduation has really changed. So a few years ago, when you might think of the Regents exams, we would tell you the number that you need to graduate. The state has really altered that with pathways, and I believe, Ms. Hanley, if you can just click that link up at the top, the roll of Regents into there. Thank you. And if you could just scroll down and go to the second link. This is the website that's provided on the PowerPoint. If anybody would like to go and see the information there, scroll down a little lower. Yeah, the second link, bullet summary, yes. Thank you. So this is the traditional one where we can see that very first list. That tells us exactly the number of exams. If you can go back one and now go to the top one, you'll get a sense of, yes, that one. The top one will now give you really a sense of what we call the pathways. The pathways open up many opportunities for students. They are areas related to career development, occupational studies, sometimes can be combined with programs at Wilson Tech. And it also gives flexibility with Regents exam scores, where if you score up to a certain level in one exam, it can be offset by another type of exam. So our guidance counselors have attended a lot of training on this, and we have had students graduate using some of the career pathways. So just wanted to give you the idea that the role of the Regents exams has really expanded into multiple ways. The other thing that has changed a lot is the actual curriculum that is being tested by the Regents exams. So many of us will remember when the Common Core started, and we started with the Common Core standards. That led to changes in curriculum, and that led to changes in testing. The first one was the Algebra 1 test and the new English exam, now referred to as the ELA Regents. They came in with a lot of challenges. Schools were asked to administer either both exams or to select either the old one or the new one. And that's really a difficult decision because you want to give students multiple opportunities to try an exam to ensure that students who may be struggling have the opportunity to pass. And with each of the new exams that they phase in, there's going to be a time when that older exam is not given anymore. So you have to really think about where can you provide the greatest instruction to help the most amount of students to be successful. This also then led to the change with geometry. Again, that had a lot of public scrutiny. There was a lot of concerns around the scoring of it in terms of the new bell curve that was being used. You also heard a lot of things in the news when the Algebra 2s started their implementation. So it has been definitely a challenge to bring in all of the exams. Now we're switching to the next generation learning standards. The Common Core are phasing out. We're currently in an implementation phase where we're training our staff, and now this is the next delivery of exams. This coming June, we will be doing Global History and Geography 2, then US History, and then you can see the list cycling through. We're coming back again with a new algebra test in 2022, another new algebra 2 test in 2024, so it keeps changing. What's interesting about this graph is the years that you see multiple exams changing. Because in order for this to happen, there is a lot of training that has to happen for the faculty and staff. Then there has to be revisions in curriculum writing and the curriculum delivered to students. So it presents challenges for schools. And what it means is that we've kind of lost the ability to look at Regents exams the way that we used to, sort of like apples to apples. Each test is phasing in at a different time, and each test has a different rating level. So what the state is doing for the Common Core is they are determining what is mastery, and for some tests that might be 74 or higher, for some that might be 78 or higher, for some that might be an 80 or higher. So it's not always the same, it's dependent on the test. So just a lot of changes for schools to implement with fidelity to ensure that students are ready to be successful on their tests. So the next thing we wanted to do is take you through how we use the data. Regardless of all the changes with the standards, regardless of all of the changes in the types of assessments, the one thing that we can always utilize Regents scores for is to assess how our students are performing. And so we utilize resources such as the BOCES assessment reporting system, and all of our teachers are trained to go in there. They're each given their accounts. This is something that Mrs. Gorman and Mrs. Fine played a very large role in, along with our building administrators. But Mrs. Gorman and Mrs. Fine really ensure that all of our teachers are using their accounts actively. There are many school districts where teachers do not have individual accounts, where they're not going in, but our teachers really utilize data, and it's part of our department meetings. And so Mrs. Brzezinski is going to take us through a little bit of an example of how we do this work, and then take us through our actual scores, looking at our passing rate and our mastery rate. And then I've asked Mrs. Gorman if she could just give us a quick example of the types of tools she uses with teachers when they're working in bars. And I've asked Mrs. Fine to give you an example of some of the work that our teachers produce after going through a data study.
Thank you, Dr. Hull. Data does excite us, so I hope you're excited. And in our alignment of the belief that the race to excellence has no finish line, we're always looking to see how we can continue to improve, whether it's students passing rates, mastery rates, until 100% of our students get 100% of the time. We still have more work to do. But we are a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, and I am proud to demonstrate some of the findings as we analyze our data. So this has a pointer, yes? Or no?
I don't think that's turned on, so I'm controlling your slides.
Okay, can you go back then? All right. Thank you. So when we look at data, we're looking at areas of strength, areas of need, and how questions on the Regent exams correlate with standards and performance indicators. In doing so, we work with our faculty to identify the instructional implications that we can make as we continue to improve our teaching and learning. So we have selected for you an example to illustrate how we analyze data using the U.S. History and Government Regent exam. This will help to illustrate how we identify trends. Okay, we've selected this exam because every student at this point takes this exam. The standards and the assessment have been rather consistent over the past 10 years, thus providing us with a rich repository of data to monitor. As a result, our faculty, in looking at the data, have made adjustments in their instructional delivery that has enabled us to get 100% of our students passing in June of 2018. So you will notice also that John Glenn High School has outperformed Suffolk County. And in 2016, Suffolk County declined while John Glenn High School remained constant in their performance. But in both years, the subgroup with the lowest passing rate, 79% and 75% respectively, was our students with disabilities. So this is an exercise that we want to engage in. The next slide, please. So now we want to drill down at a more granular level to identify which students make up the students with disabilities subgroup and glean more information about the trends in their performance. We use the school report card from 2015-16, which includes the data of all the students that took the exam over the course of the 3 Regents administrations, January, June, and August. So as you can see up here, it tells us from the school report card that we had 24 of our students with disabilities take the exam, January, June, and August. And that 22 of those 24 students with disabilities achieved 55 or higher, which makes them eligible for either a local diploma or a Regents diploma with a combination of other scores. So we continue to drill down and discover that 19 of the 24 students with disabilities achieved a passing rate of 65 or higher, thus making them eligible for the Regents diploma. When we drill down even further, we want to know who are those 5 students with disabilities who did not achieve the 65. And we learned that 2 of those students were also in the ENL cohort. We learned that one of the students transferred to Glenn from a non-Regents bound program, and that again, after giving students AIS support and asking them to retake the exam, we learned that 4 of those students passed with a 65 or higher. This is one example of how we use the data to continue to propel our students to the next level. Next slide, please. I'm now going to take you through, a little more briefly, all 10 Regents exams to examine the trends in passing and mastery rate of our students, which we extrapolated from the school report card from the 2015-2016 school year, 2016 and 17 school year, and the preliminary results from this past June's administration. As you know, these results are available to the public via the New York School report card. The link is up there for you. When accessing the school report card and analyzing its data, it's important to recall that the data does include the 3 administrations, June, January, and August. Equally important to note is that the data includes all of the students in the Elwood School District. This includes the students in out-of-district placements who do not attend John Glenn High School. The New York State report card is always 1 year behind in publishing its data as they undergo a thorough process verifying the data before it's released for public consumption. That is why when we discuss data from June 2018 administration, we note it as preliminary data because they have not been officially verified by New York State, although our data is accurately reported. So we will begin with the passing rates on all 10 of our exams, beginning with the 3 exams that are given in mathematics. As you compare column 1 to column 3, so we compare ourselves to Suffolk County to identify trends, but then we're always looking really at who we are as John Glenn and trying to be our best selves, so we'll compare ourselves each year to see if we're improving and where we can continue to make progress. So column 1 to column 2, to 3 rather, indicates that we've improved in all 3 exams. As you compare column 1 to column 3, for example, you can see that we went in algebra from 92 to 93%. And you can see that on all 3 exams, our passing rate increased from the school year 15-16 to 16-17. The next slide, additionally, you will note that each year we continue to improve our mastery rates on each exam and continue to outperform the students in the county as well. Again, as we continue to examine some trends, we look at our English exams, even though they have changed over the past couple of years, and our social studies exams, which are undergoing the changes as we speak. We see that from 15-16 to 16-17, our students have outperformed the students across the county, and that our results are consistent with trends that are seen throughout the county as well. Similarly, on both the Global History and United States History exam, we notice that our students continue to achieve higher mastery rates than students in Suffolk County for both the 15-16 and 16-17 school years. Now on to the science department. On all 4 of our science exams, our students continue to pass at higher rates than the county average, and you will again note that our passing rates continue to improve each year. For example, if you're looking at earth science, again, you're going to compare from column 1 to 3 and 5. We're looking at earth science improving 82% to 89% to 92% respectively. So again, that's an example of just what we're looking for in our data, drilling down to subgroups, drilling down even further to individual students, assessing whether or not those students have been adequately prepared to sit for a retake. And the data here reveals that by and large, trends in students' performance are consistent with the county and that our students continue to achieve mastery rates at a higher rate than their Suffolk County counterparts. Once again, we're constantly evaluating our data, we love it, but to inform our instructional decisions to result in the highest level of student achievement. I will now call upon my colleague, Ms. Eileen Kelly-Foreman, to discuss some of the practices that we regularly employ in both department and faculty meetings as our staff engages in analyzing data.
Good evening again. I'm hiding this, so I'm not tempted to lose it. Can you advance the one? Nope, one more. There. Okay. So it is my opportunity tonight to take you live into a tool that we use, as Dr. Hull said. It is called the BOCES Assessment Reporting System, otherwise known to us in the school as BARS. And we use this to analyze our Regents exam data at the high school. So our teachers, like Dr. Hull said, each have individual logins so that they can view data for the district as a whole and also for their individual courses. The BARS accounts, actually before I do that, let me just show you. On the bottom is a sample of a template that our teachers use when they are looking at the data, just to kind of get the ball rolling, start to gather some of their thoughts and observations, and then from there we break it down even further. So we are going live with technology. Oh wait, I think I did this already. Okay. So I already logged in, and as you can see here, we have options of different years. So at our teachers' hands very quickly, they can do not just assess this past June's exam data, but they can start to look for trends across multiple years to see if there was an inconsistency in one assessment, or if we changed the way we taught something, and how we can improve over time. So I'm going to go into this past June. I tried to be prepared.
Yes.
Okay, trying. That's the worst of our technical difficulties, though. We're in good hands here. Okay, so again, we're going to look at the 17-18 school year. So when our teachers log in, the first thing that they do is they select Regents exams, since that's the data that they are interested in. And then they can navigate here. So we have ELA, math, science, and social studies. I'm going to do science. We are going to look at just one report tonight to demonstrate how we look at data in the high school. Our teachers have access to a variety of reports. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at living environment from June. If you look here in this section, this describes all the different reports. So there's things like constructed response, which are open-ended questions. That report just looks specifically at those types of questions. The frequency distribution shows teachers how our students performed at a mastery level, at a passing rate, at a 55 and above rate, or below there.
Per question? Per question, or?
That one's overall, but I'm going to show you that part also, which is my favorite report. We have individual student performance reports so that we can look at how an individual student may have performed and identify if there was a particular topic where the student struggled or a concept that they struggled on. This is particularly important when we look at our students who maybe did not pass the first time or maybe just scored under mastery, and we really want to look to have them sit for an exam again. What areas do we need to focus so that we can help them to reach our target goals with them? So my favorite report, though, and Mrs. Free, this aligns with your question, is called the Performance Report with Gap Analysis. So once I select that, you can see over on the right-hand side here, we have options. So we can compare ourselves to the region, which is Suffolk County. We can compare ourselves to the level 4 or the level 3 cut point. So those are mastery levels or passing levels. And that's my question difficulty. Okay. Again, we're going to look at living environment from June 2018. The teachers will then choose, I'm going to just do the, sorry, I have to scroll from it. Okay, they have on this sidebar over here, again, they can choose to sort by item number, which is how I'm going to pull the data. They can look at the standards or the sub-skills, so that gives them an idea, kind of groups along units usually of how we teach so that we can assess, if we change something and it worked really well, we need to make an adjustment moving forward. It also lets us see just a better idea of if there was one unit that really was heavily assessed on an exam and to see if that's where we expect it to be or not. So again, I'm going to do item numbers here, and you can see the buildings are highlighted for Regents exams. We really only have data from obviously the middle school and the high school, but the teachers can choose to just look at the high school. So for things like Algebra 1 and Earth Science, where we do have middle school data, they maybe want to just look at how the high school performed. Here is where they have the option to break down, particularly on this report, district, school, they can break it down to themselves. As an administrator, I can look at all of the teachers, but they would only have the option to look at their own classes. Once they do that, over here it would populate then again with all of the different sections. So if you teach an honors and a Regents level course, you may want to look at that differently because we don't teach the same way in both of those areas and the results may look different. So that's something else that they have. And then as we scroll down here further, you can see that they also have the options to break down by subgroup. And this speaks to what Mrs. Brzezinski was showing you, how even when we first preliminarily look at data, it may look amazing, but we can always drill down further and start to really look at how have changes, specific changes we've made, impacted our students and their learning at the high school. So I'm going to just run the report. Cross your fingers. Again, so this is the performance report gap analysis, and it provides an overview of a population's performance by question. There we go. This is like an exercise in if I need glasses or not. So the first part. I know. The first part gives the teachers a brief overview of what the report is. It also has a link to a glossary of terms, so for our teachers that maybe don't look at stats that frequently, they can go in here and familiarize themselves if they need to. I scrolled too far down. Okay, so this graph shows you the blue is the region or Suffolk County, and the red is how our district performed. And here's, speaking to your question, these do go in order of item number. So things that we look at just based on this graph is stamina. If we look at questions from 1 to the end of the exam, how did our students do? Sometimes you'll see that we fatigue towards the end of the test. There could be different reasons for that. It could be that some assessments, as the questions go on, get more difficult. Sometimes it might be that students tire. So in this case, we're not seeing that, but that's something we look at. We look at areas where students performed, where less than 50% of our students maybe got a question right, where less than 75% of our students got it right. And we start to think about looking at that specific question. Was the question difficult? Was the question worded poorly? How did the rest of Suffolk County do compared to us? We look at places where we score really well and we think about how did we teach that? How do we make sure that we continue to score and outperform Suffolk County in those areas? So even just looking at this picture, we sometimes get a lot of information. Going back, if I had done it by standards, sometimes that means also to us that one unit we taught really, really well. One unit, what happens here, maybe we need to spend a little bit more time there in the future. So the picture really tells us a lot, and we can look at consistency. You know, we're pretty consistent in how we're outperforming, but there are certain areas, like here, for example, where we get a little bit closer. So maybe we want to look at that too. As we move forward, oh, that's really tiny, but I'll tell you what it says. It's the aggregated data. So on the left, it gives us the performance indicator, the standards. The next column where it's blue is a hyperlink to the actual questions. So these are all, they say MC because they're multiple choice. When you move forward, it's constructed response or CR. It tells us how many points the question is worth, and then it tells us the district, Western Suffolk BOCES, and region or Suffolk County. So the first number is the percentage of students that receive full credit. The second number is the gap between us and the other area. When we fall below, like Western Suffolk BOCES on a particular question, it'll be in red, so that it draws your attention to it. So as you can see, we didn't on this particular page, but it's something that teachers can look at. I'm going to arrow one more. It is really hard to see, so I'm just going to tell you because I know the answer already. But question 12, if you look all the way to the right, the last 4 columns, it tells you choices A, B, C, or D. So we get an analysis of what percentage of our students chose each question. So for question 12, something about 72%, I think, of our students got the question correct. And you can see a little bit, it's bolded. So our teachers know looking at it, the bolded answer was the correct answer. However, if you look, nearly every single child who did not get that question right picked the same answer, the same incorrect answer. And so when our teachers then click on that, and they go to the test, it becomes obvious that our students had a vocabulary misconception between mitosis and meiosis. And so that's something that we can easily address in class.
That's all. Told you it was exciting.
Come on, I told you it's my favorite report. We can do all night on this. I'm going, while I'm here, question 13, I'll just tell you the answer again. In this one, again, 70% of our students answered the question correctly, but the data shows us that there was no one clear choice that was confusing students. And so that we look at differently than the first one. And again, it is a vocabulary question. We have, Mrs. Fine's going to speak to some of the professional development work we've done associated with that, but 2 different questions, 2 different results, both based on vocabulary, but you can see that in 2 different ways. And again, it just goes through all the different multiple choice and then all of the different constructed response. And some of my departments sometimes will say, we want to go back and pull some of the constructed response. We want to know what did our students write because we didn't get a lot of full credit. We got partial credit, we didn't get full credit. So sometimes we go and look at that too. So our teachers spend time on their own and in groups during department meetings, during their own time, examining the student data to make informed instructional decisions in their classrooms. Even when our results are very high, we have ways of drilling down into our subgroups or difficulty levels to further inform our practices. And Mrs. Fine is going to show you some of the examples of how our teachers apply this data and other to their instruction.
Good evening. So this slide presents an example of how one team of teachers, this was actually completed by a content teacher and an E&L teacher working together looking at the data. So they analyzed the gap item analysis report that Eileen just walked you through, and in doing so, this was one of our department meetings where we did this work. So it's just their initial view of the data, and then they spend time drilling down further. But within that period of time, in the first box at the top, you can see that they drill down to look at a particular subgroup. And in this case, it was E&L students. They looked at the data, and one of the things that they noticed is that the students really struggled with the longer, complex text, and found that there was one question in particular that was really challenging for them, and it was at the end of the exam. So what they decided to do in the third column, they started jotting down strategies that they can use in the classroom or in E&L standalone setting or with the AIS service providers, where they would look at strategies for helping students work through challenging, complex texts. How can you break it down? How can you manage your time? Another thing that they would consider is watching students during classroom observations to see if they're losing stamina, as I mentioned earlier. The second box
speaks to analysis of looking at that grid and particular questions. And in this case, that idea of academic vocabulary came up again. And this was actually for not specific subgroup, but for the classwork in general. So in the third column, they started to notice that a lot of the challenges was the academic vocabulary within the questions themselves. They also noticed that the similar language is used in other content areas and on other exams. So they started to think about what can we do in our class, but what can we also do to work with our colleagues in other subject areas to build the same vocabulary skills. And in the third box, they looked at, if you recall that grade, and there was some areas that were a little bit lower. And in this case, they noticed that both the Regent and John Glenn High School had a lower rate of success, or students who received full credit on constructive response questions. So they might have received 4 out of 5 points, but they're still not receiving 5 out of 5 points. So they put their heads together and they talked about ways that they can increase that mastery level on these particular types of questions. And some of their ideas included providing opportunities for students to explore exemplar responses. So they have a better picture of knowing what does a 5-point answer look like, and using the rubric to identify those skills and places, the reasons why that particular exemplar achieved that level of a score. And additionally, they talked about and they thought about activities that they can do in class where students will have more opportunities to self-assess their own work and to work with peers for peer editing purposes. So you're getting feedback from one another and providing feedback to your peers as well. So this is just one example that occurred in one department meeting, and the teachers can always go back and add more to this, to their knowledge by looking across classes, across the department, compare their findings with another colleague's findings, and that's how we also determine our curriculum decisions within that class on the instructional level. But we also use this data for much more big picture decisions. We use this data to inform our goals for curriculum adjustments, resource purchases, and professional development. And through this process, one example of how we use this data is this idea of academic vocabulary has been coming up because the new exams has a great deal of academic vocabulary on it. We provided a 2-day workshop this summer and opened it up to all our staff members from K through 12 with a consultant who's known for her expertise in strategies for teaching academic vocabulary. And we had 26 teachers participate over the 2 days. So it was really beneficial, many of which are now using some of the strategies taught in their own classroom practices, and they're sharing them with colleagues. So we're really excited about that initiative. It's something that we're looking forward to, and we're looking to expand to one of our schools this year as well. I'm going to invite Dr. Ho back up.
Thank you, Ms. Fung. So the other way we use data is looking at achievement for our students overall from a big picture. In this case, we're looking at the Regents diploma rate, and then we're looking at the Regents with advanced designation. You'll see in June 2016 in the left column, we had 97% of our students graduate with a Regents diploma, but only 57% were able to graduate with a diploma with advanced designation. So looking at the data, what we determined is that one of the requirements that was holding back our students was having a 3rd year of a Regents math. And so the curriculum team at the time, with our building administrators, analyzed how we could have more students take a 3rd year of math. We were already addressing a 2nd year of math because we do not offer non-Regents geometry. We want all of our general education students and all of our special education students for whom it is appropriate to take the geometry in their 2nd year. And now we were looking to increase the number of students who try Algebra 2, which is also part of the open enrollment model. And it required work with our guidance counselors, required work with our classroom teachers. It's, again, part of all the work that went along with how we opened up access to the AP as well. And you can see 2 years later that in June 2018, our rate for diploma is steady at 97%, but we have increased the amount of students graduating with advanced designation by 20 points at 77%, which is a very big increase and really reflective of studying deeply into the data and then making shifts within our program, within our policies, to have more students challenging themselves. And this creates just many more opportunities for students to be college and career ready, and to have the option to pick the college that best suits their needs, and have more competitive transcripts. So this really isn't we tried to give you a broad example of how we go through data, both looking at it very discreetly, drilling down into subgroups, then looking at how we use the test data to inform instruction, how it translates into department level work and into actual staff development that we offer, and how we make purchases. So it's really very broadly used. And I really want to thank Ms. Krasinski, Mrs. Kelly Borman, and Mrs. Fine. This is a lot of the work that our directors are engaged in on a regular basis, particularly because the Regents exams are changing so much. They are at meetings every single month from Western Suffolk BOCES in all the subjects area, and Mrs. Fine also does E&L in addition to the social studies and English. And we really rely on them to get that most current thinking, the most current information from state ed to bring back to us. When Mrs. Brzezinski and I are at our meetings, it's touched on, but there's so many other topics that are included as well that it's really an important role of the directors to constantly be working on this. In fact, for example, at the last social studies meeting, Mrs. Fine, after consulting with Mrs. Brzezinski, they planned together. She's working with the teachers on making a decision for what we're going to do this June for the new global and geography 2. Do we give the current model and the new model, or do we jump into the new model? If we give the current model, how many administrations are left in case the student doesn't pass and they can try again? And how do we shift our curriculum between two tests that have very different types of questions? So it's deep work, and I just want to thank them for that. So thank you very much, and any questions?
We do need to pause on that slide for just a moment.
Yep.
Thank you. If you look at a 20% gain over 2 years in the number of students receiving that advanced Regents diploma, I think it's reflective of the work that's happening in the building and the excellence that we've been referencing all night. But I also want to point out that the qualifications for that advanced diploma have increased and become more difficult in that same time period. So a 20% gain in 2 years, if we set it as a goal, we would almost view it as unattainable, because of such a large increase in such a short period of time, where the rigor of obtaining that goal is increasing. So to commend the faculty, staff, and administration of the high school is an understatement. It's almost without reproach. So congratulations.
Questions? Comments?
Okay, so I just wanted to thank you for the time and effort that you put into this presentation. It's mind-blowing. It dives so deep, deeper than I could have ever wrapped my brain around. And I just want to commend you guys for the hard work. I thank you for all the time and effort in achieving Blue Ribbon, in making great gains. We have great leadership. We have great staff in place, and thank you for bringing the momentum. And I'm thrilled. I mean, these are great numbers. You guys should all be very proud of yourself, and the staff and students alike. Thank you.
I just want to add on to that. It was a great presentation, and I think it answered a lot of the questions that we had about the beginning, because like you, data is exciting to me, and it's a way to actually look at the voids that we have in our curriculum and the opportunities that we have to go forward. If you can just clarify, you keep talking about mastery, and I just want you to explain what the significance is it for our audience and in relationship to the advanced degree in very concise, just general terms so people understand what that really means.
So under the traditional system, an 85 or higher is mastery.
Mm-hmm.
Under the new system, the Common Core and now the next generation Regents are going to be reported in a level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're trying to transition to another way of reporting, and so that your score would not be a percentage out of 100, it would be one of those numbers. And you have to have a 5 to achieve mastery. And then what that 5 starts at is a little bit different for each exam. So basically it's saying that there's a specific definition for mastery, and that is you're exceeding the standards, the expectations of the standards. Level 4 is now meeting, if one of you want to jump in with better language, 4 is meeting it, 5 is now exceeding it, and then 85 and higher is saying that you have mastered the standards of that particular exam. And then for graduating with distinction, graduating with distinction means you have to have achieved a certain number of exams, and there are specifics about how many you have to have in science, how many you have to have in math. And then we have advanced designation with honors, where you get into a particular score that you have to have achieved as well. So that's good.
Yeah.
I know you're talking about.
So James, I have a question. And I also echo, this was an amazing presentation, and you taking us through that bars and looking at what you look at really helped us to understand how you use that, and really helped us to understand how each one of you in the curriculum department looks at a certain test and then goes to the teacher level, then goes to the question level, then writes curriculum around what you're getting. I mean, it was really eye-opening and a great presentation, really helped us to understand. So thanks for your hard work giving the presentation, but also we can see how much time you put into it and how you analyze each thing and then give feedback to teachers, and how it's, you know, it's a loop, which is amazing. So the bars, that's available to everyone who is part of BOCES, correct?
Well, it's a subscription.
It's a subscription, so
Yes.
not everybody subscribes.
I think almost every district does at this point. It's almost
Okay.
impossible to do
Right.
any data analysis without it.
So things have changed so much. You know, I'm probably showing my age, but you know, we used to look at Regents from 10 years before and do practice questions, and you know, you could do 10 years worth of Regents and pretty much do well if you studied. And you could compare your scores to other districts and that kind of thing. And now everything is so, you can't really go back and study from an old test because the tests change. And you can't really look at other districts because some districts use new tests, some districts use old tests, some districts don't make a chunk of students take the Regents. There's non-Regents courses. So, you know, the populations are so skewed, you're not really comparing apples to apples, which was very well explained. When you look at the bars, I understand how you look at it for, and that data is readily available. The school report card is a year behind, right? So that bars data, you're looking at June data from the year that just passed. So it can affect teaching this year. As opposed to looking at a school report card. But what about the student that that doesn't do well on a June exam and wants to retake in August? Does that student have the availability of looking at that data and saying, this is the kind of question I got wrong and this is what I need to work on over the summer?
I mean, if I may share, that we get calls over the summer all the time. They come in, they can get a copy of their exam, take it home and work on it with a tutor to identify the areas that they need to work on.
So everybody knows, like there's availability, that the parents know that this is available, that they can find out what they got wrong, where their weakness is. Is that something that we need to?
Yes, but not through bars. That's because we scored the exam. And so we know which questions the students got wrong right away. This data takes a while to populate. So
That's my question.
We're not pulling bars for that. We're actually looking at the scoring key of that particular child. And so we know exactly what ones they got wrong as soon as the exam scored. So that's.
Okay, so the students have to come to you and
Yes.
say, what did I get wrong? What do I need to work on?
Yeah, because normally we have to, the parent has to request it. There's a whole rule about what you're allowed to show in an exam, because security now is so very different, because Regents exams are part of the APPR. So there's a whole host of rules that have to be followed. we use that process.
Again, well said. Dr.
Okay,
So the bars data we use, it's when the teachers have discussions with students. For example, an example that happened recently was after engaging in data study in a department meeting, a teacher decided to begin the class with a certain kind of do now that was directly related to what the teacher had seen in the data. So it impacts students that way. The teacher's bringing it into the students and they're experiencing it in the class. And teachers will speak to students about, this is something that we saw students struggle with. So we know we need to pay attention to this, or this is something we need to do.
right, I understand how it affects
Yeah, but
this
it's-
year's instruction.
But I don't know that it, we don't normally utilize bars with parents.
Not the bars, but, so what typically happens.
Come use the microphone so parents at home can hear us.
What I believe typically happens is that when we see a student does not pass, so we scan our exams, we don't actually know the score when we grade them. We scan them and then within a 24-hour period, we get a report with how the student performs. So then the guidance the teachers typically actually will reach out to students that maybe did not pass the exam. What some students will ask, the teachers will sit and meet with them and talk to them also. If they know that they want to sit and retake it, they can talk to them about areas where they need to improve, where they may want to work on it over the summer. So like Dr. Hull said, they can get a copy of their responses on the exam. We just don't have the printout of the breakout by standard, but all of that analysis we don't have available until usually about September. But we can still talk to students about, teachers can scan the exam and know, looking at the students' responses, this is an area, or this was an essay where that's, if you're going to work with a tutor or summer school or anything like that over the summer, practice independently, this is the area maybe you want to focus on. Does that make more sense?
Yes.
And the turnaround is very tight between the report card and the registration for summer school. So a lot of times students are retaking it in January also. And then we have access to more data. And that's when our guidance counselors are really mining data and looking at who do we need to go reach out to because we want them to sit for this test again. So a
Oh,
lot
I
of
see,
that
so
is
the
happening.
guidance is involved in this
Absolutely.
loop of getting
Yes,
kids to
they're a big
retake
part
the
of it.
exam.
Yeah, reaching out to
The results, we
parents.
sit together.
Oh,
Yes.
great,
And
okay.
can I add one more thing?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
So we're in the process of ordering January exams, right? So that order has to happen by like November something. And the assistant principal in charge of ordering testing, which is Mr. McNamara, is reaching out to guidance to say, okay, who failed that last exam? Who needs it for graduation? Who are our walk-ins? So we can order the exams. And then we look at their schedules and say, this youngster has like 3 study halls. Let's get them into AIS. And so we'll start just providing them with that intense academic support so that they can sit for the exam with a higher degree of preparation and not just going cold from June. Okay.
And I'll add just quickly, at this point, we do have the bars, so we can do that individual printout. So the AIS teachers, I'll sometimes print for them, this is where you can work with the student, and then they do have that detailed
Okay, that was my
support.
question, because in your presentation, you did refer to the fact that you can pull it by student, and so there is a lag. So if a child did not get mastery, I'm going to say in the June test, and they want to retake it in January, you could utilize that though for that specific John Smith, pull down and look at the areas that that child would need, areas of opportunity for that child to succeed and get mastery, correct? That's phenomenal. And have we've done that? Do we do that?
Again, I don't have any other questions, do you?
I have one.
Okay, Mrs. Marcus.
I know that you said that every teacher has access to the bars and that they do some individual review and then departmental meetings and then administration. Where do you think most of the analysis work comes from? Do you think teachers are doing it mostly independently and they're revising how they're instructing their students, or is it or in departmental groups, or through the administration and then giving direction down to the teachers?
I mean, for me, I feel like it's a critical part of the department meetings because you have to have that facilitation of the discussion. And we're so accustomed now over the years of being deep in bars. And when we go to meetings, there's also insights that are offered, or someone will shift one of the reports that they'll tell us about. Like some of these reports didn't exist 3 years ago. So I think an important part of it is the collaboration. And then if you guys want to.
And I think just to add, we talk about data from the Regent exam, and then we talk about teachers creating quizzes, units, benchmark assessments that model the final assessment, and running item analysis on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, and then using that data to then impact their instructional decisions the next day. Exit tickets, if they're giving Regent level questions as a summary in a class, how many of your kids did well, what do you need to adjust? So we're constantly assessing how our students are doing on a daily basis well before we get to the Regents exam. Most of our teachers could predict with a high degree of certainty how their students are going to perform within like a 5 to 10 point range.
I just wanted to add, another value in facilitating is because we are at multiple department meetings. And from that view, when we work with one department, they're working with their group, but we're seeing and hearing conversations that are occurring from department to department. And then we pick up on things that we're not even noticing. We're starting to hear similar conversations. And there grows interdisciplinary kind of discussions. For example, we looked at the constructive response data across just the grid, across 3 Regents exams. And I took that sheet and I brought it down here to our middle school teachers and said, okay, if this is what we're noticing with students not getting full credit, how can we backwards model that and not wait till they're in high school to do that? So that's another way that we use the data.
Yeah, I just want to add too that I had a lot of great questions, and then they were all answered by the great presentation. So that was a little sad, but wonderful. But I do want to say too, I feel like there's been in years past, like data as being a bad word, and this presentation was so helpful. Not even as a board member, I think we all feel very secure after hearing this presentation. But as a parent, it's an excellent reminder that data can be used to help specifically our individual students, our students as a whole. It can inform instruction, it can get everybody to the next level. So it's wonderful to see that. So I totally appreciate that and commend everyone that's continually working on this. I know I feel like we're all like thrilled.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Great job.
Thank you.
Oh, I know.
Well, we're halfway through the agenda. Dr. Stevens, it's been a lot of thank you.
They're still here.
Just hanging out, had some great times.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're up to board donations. I think Mrs. Weiss is going to say a few words before we hopefully accept them.
Yes. Do you want me to read, or are you going to do the donation? Do you want me to read them out? Sure. Okay. So the donations, we have a donation from the Booster Club for $1,920. And what these are, they're for 2 fall clubs that the Booster Club is sponsoring. There's actually, and the 2 at James, there's actually 3, I'm sorry. There's 2 at James Boyd, there's Makerspace and Love Yourself Selfie. I'm gonna get back to that in a minute. And at Harley, there's math. And one of the newer ones at Boyd is the Love Your Selfie Club. And this has been something that I just want to briefly describe it. It says young girls face increasing pressure each day to conform to the ideal image of beauty and to fit in with their peers. Learning how to strengthen self-esteem, maintain healthy friendships, embracing what makes us unique, and the power of positive self-talk at an early age is vital. A little side note, this came from something that was born out of a tragedy, and a family endowed a foundation to encourage girls. We took off from that, and this has been something that has been we've long pursued and felt that it was important to bring to the district. So I am so grateful, just as a parent, that the Booster Club is sponsoring this, and just to thank them for offering these opportunities for our kids and enriching our kids in ways that are outside of our normal budget. So thank you, and that's it.
Thank you to the Booster Club as always. Can I have a motion to accept the donation from the Elwood Booster Club? Motion by Mr. Tanya, second by Mrs. Weiss. All in favor? 5-0. We are going to take the consent agenda now, which includes the financial matters and the action items. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Mrs. Weiss, second by Mrs. Malalito. Questions or comments? All in favor? 5-0. We're up to the policy portion. I'm going to take all the policies together, and of course we'll allow for questions and comments. So can I have a motion to approve the policies, the first readings, 1, 2, and 3, policies 1, 2, and 3. Can I have a motion? Mrs. Mamalito, second by Mrs. Weiss. Questions or comments? Mrs. Myers.
On the sexual harassment policy, which we already have one, and it's the same number if people wanted to check it out. But there has been some adjustments made to it, and I would just like for Dr. Bossert to explain some of the revisions. What is different in the new revised version compared to what we already have on our website?
If I can interrupt for 1 second, this policy is a first and second reading tonight, which we normally don't do, but we were advised to do from the state.
Yeah, New York State changed regulation in the manner in which we need to train our staff regarding matters of sexual harassment. And the largest bulk of the difference in policy is the requirements for training of all faculty and staff members and how frequently that must occur. NISBA made recommended changes for us to be in compliance with the new state regulation and provided us with that guidance after we were required to adopt it. So what we did was we made sure the policy was brought forward to the Board of Education the very first opportunity to get in compliance with the new regulation. But I apologize that we did not receive that guidance until after we were statutorily required to adopt it. So the recommendation for first and second reading is because we're not currently in compliance with state law.
And the biggest change in the policy is education.
Is the training of faculty and staff, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? So we had a first and second, all in favor? Ms. Tanya?
First, second, on the second, or after, or all?
No, a first and a second on the motion.
Oh, sorry.
All in favor? 5-0. Nope. We are up to our second resident remarks. Anybody plan on getting up?
Who wants to speak?
I'll read this whole thing. Okay, I don't believe we are going to have any second resident remarks. So can I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Mrs. Mamalito, second by Mrs. Weiss. All in favor? 5-0. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Board, and happy Recognition Week, and we look forward to a valuable conference next week.